Nvidia stock is expected to report earnings this week, and today's episode was actually going to be an earnings preview. But after releasing my last video a few hours ago, we got a lot of updates coming in for Nvidia, and unfortunately the recent updates are not great updates, they're actually pretty bad. So there are reports that Nvidia customers are worrying about Nvidia GPUs overheating in the rack. So in today's episode, what I want to do is kind of share my overall thoughts of what the information is coming out, where the information is coming out, and again, what I think about the long term of the company. So let's get started with today's episode. Make sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe button to get any NVIDIA news up to date. And this is going to be the best place you're going to find any semiconductor news in general. So let's get started.
I want to thank The Motley Fool for sponsoring this video, and check out fool.com/Jose for the 10 best stocks to buy now. With that link, you get a promotional offer for the subscription service. Now, let's continue with today's episode.
Right, so the topic I want to talk about today comes from the information, and the information earlier today came out with an article saying that Nvidia customers worry about snag with new AI chip servers. And we're going to look at the information here, and a lot of other articles have popped out. If you Google Nvidia Blackwell, you will get a lot of these articles discussing what's the case. But the main thing is that there is some overheat happening in the server racks with Nvidia Black GPUs that are worrying potential big customers and could cause delays on the Blackwell platform. All right, so based on the information, Nvidia's next generation Blackwell processors are facing significant challenges with overheating when installed in high capacity server racks, reports the information. They have reportedly led to design changes and delays and raised concern among customers like Google, Meta, and Microsoft about whether they can deploy Blackwell servers on time. Now, this is mainly happening on the NVIDIA NVL72, which is the server that has 72 Blackwell GPUs on it. This problem has caused NVIDIA to evaluate the design of its server rack multiple times as overheating limits GPU performance and risk damaging components. All right, so the first thing that we can kind of get from here is that the issue seems to be more on the server design and not the chip design. And that's very, very important because it seems like if it was, I want to say if it was a chip design, that would be more critical, in my opinion, as that is something that is not irreversible. Once you have a bad chip, it's not like, hey, you can fix that bad chip that has been made. Now, it seems like the issue is coming from the design of the server. And if you are not familiar with the server, I'll put the picture here. But this is pretty much kind of like that big rack system that includes all the components. And it seems like the way that maybe the current Lego pieces, let's talk about in Lego pieces, the way the current Lego pieces are put together is maybe not creating plenty of work, a lot airflow, maybe the cooling isn't in the right location or whatever being, there is some issues with the server design that is causing overheating issues. Now, the great thing about this is something that can be, if this is the true issue, right? Obviously, we're just going with what we know, but if this is the true issue, then this is something that can be engineered. They can either create new server systems, they can redesign them, they can put certain cooling in certain locations, which can help offset where maybe some of the big heats are coming from. So in the perspective of the Blackwell chip, not necessarily bullish, but can definitely alter maybe some timelines. But it's not game over. And like I mentioned, it's not irreversible. So that's the first thing to understand. So I think that's really good, in my opinion, to understand that. The second thing that we also want to think about is if there are any delays with these servers, what's going to be the bad thing, right? So right now we are in this AI market where everybody's trying to be the best AI player. And to be the best AI player, you need to have the best training chips. So the best training chip out there is expected to be Blackwell. And I would personally be worried if the second in charge or the second chip that's best for training would have been something else. But the second chip that's better for training is NVIDIA's H200. And the one followed by that is NVIDIA's H100. And then followed by that, there's actually no other player out there that's really doing any form of training AI chips, as we saw from the latest benchmark that we talked about a few days ago, the only player that has really been seen as a training competitor is Google's Tensor Processing Unit, Google TPU. But that cannot outperform NVIDIA's H100. So the number one chip for training is Blackwell. The number two chip for training is the H200. And the number three is the H100. So again, this for me might not be completely bearish. It would have only been bearish if the competition for Nvidia was so much closer. If there was any real competition, the only competition here from Nvidia is Nvidia itself. So I don't believe if there is some delays in the Blackwell server that is going to cause a transfer to a new customer. Maybe you might delay some products, or maybe they might just shift over to the H200 or the H100 in the time being until these AI server designs get redesigned. Now, I don't want to sound like a perma bull. I believe issues like this can definitely create negative selling price for the stock. I think if these results are true, and obviously we don't know if they are true, but if they are true, we can definitely see a huge negative sentiment on the stock price. The stock price, I wouldn't be surprised if it could go down double digits if this is true. Now, if this is true and the stock price does go down, I personally believe that would be a great buying opportunity because, like I mentioned, this is more of a delay, and even with a delay, this is something that can be reverse engineered if the information is true, and there is no competition in charge. So NVIDIA has created this amazing lead in this race that even if they have to stop to drink some water, if they have to stop to just take a nap, if they could even take a few days of sleep in this race, and the competition is still nowhere near. So it could create negative selling price on the stock, and I believe that would be strong buying opportunities for the stock if we get to those levels. But if we're nowhere near that right now, and if we are getting to those levels, I would do definitely a video on that. So make sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe to stay updated. But right now, I just want to say to investors that, look, there is the possibility of stock price going down with this. In the short term, this can create a lot of negative pressure, but I gave the reasoning why in the long term of things, I personally wouldn't be afraid or wouldn't be worried. And that's the great thing about being long-term investors is you get to see a lot of these things happening within the tech world. And it's also important to understand not only the tech world, but also the competitors. So you can sit down and say, hey, look, even if NVIDIA takes a nap, even if NVIDIA takes a hibernation rest, competition is not here right now. So at least I can rest easy knowing that the company will go fine. Now, continuing in this article, though, it does mention that NVIDIA has already instructed its suppliers to make several design changes to the racks to counteract overheating issues. They also mentioned that while these adjustments are standard for such large-scale tech releases, they have nonetheless added to delay, further pushing back expected shipping dates. So it does seem like this is not something out normal. This is something that tends to happen a lot in the world space. Obviously, right now, NVIDIA is kind of under I want to say, not a telescope, microscope? Is a microscope the right way to say? Well, it's under a microscope. So everybody's seeing anything that they can come up with and kind of bring negativity to the spotlight of NVIDIA, because that obviously brings views. Obviously, like I mentioned, it could bring delays and it obviously could bring some negative sentiments to the stock. But in the long term, it seems like NVIDIA is already proactive on it, which is great news. It's something that typically happens in the space. And unfortunately, right now, the AI market is just evolving at such a rapid pace that you have to be, one of the risks for this market is things are not going to go as planned. We can see it here. I mean, we saw it previously with NVIDIA and how they had to change some of the masking on their GPU chip. Now we're seeing kind of this issue. Because the market is evolving at such a rapid pace, there's going to be mistakes that happen along the ways. And those are some of the risks you need to understand could happen with investments like this. And again, why I mentioned it's important to know the competitive space. In response to the delays and overheating issues, an NVIDIA spokesperson reminded Reuters about the collaborative efforts with cloud providers and described the design changes as part of normal development processes. So again, it does seem like Nvidia is already on top of it. It's not nothing new. Unfortunately, it's something that it's under the microscope right now because of the overall AI market, especially with earnings coming out this week. So again, this can create some negative pressure on the stock. But if I am a big investor of Nvidia, I wouldn't be worried about it in the long term. That doesn't mean that the stock isn't going to go down, right? I definitely could see if these are true, stock prices go down. But if they do go down to some attractive levels, I believe this is going to create opportunities. And in why in previous videos, I've talked about it in previous videos, Nvidia is going to be great for the patient investors, and the patient investor both for buying opportunities and for the patient investor that's willing to hold this company for the long term to be able to sell at some nice returns. So I think that's all I have. If you have any questions, feel free to let me know in the comments below. But I will be doing an earnings preview later this week, most likely Monday, obviously, as earnings are Wednesday. I will be live streaming on Wednesday the earnings, and I will be releasing numerous videos after earnings talking about all the individual markets that they hit. So make sure to stay tuned to the channel. Take care, have a good day, and see you next time.